then my first tip to you would be to just be as good as you possibly can be at your craft right now. I'm not saying there's no room for growth. Of course, there's always room for growth. But it is a very competitive world. And if you're going to have a chance to survive as a creative, then you have to present your best face from the get-go. Because with social media these days, you do not have the time or the luxury to necessarily develop that craft and that stagecraft away from the public eye. People have mobile phones with videos in them everywhere. So just because you think you're doing a small gig in a back room of a pub in Ealing, the next thing you know, it could be, global on somebody's webpage. If you are looking at it from the business end, so you're looking to be agents, managers, run your own labels, then it's a very different skill set that you need to develop, and you need to do it quickly before you start putting your toe in the water. And by that I mean, and it's perfectly possible to do it if you put the graft in, and that is to find out what your role entails, to find out where that role fits in to the rest of the business that you're hoping to work in. You may be one of the ones that wants to break the mold. You don't want to be a record label like everybody else. You have a different idea. Well, you need to have researched to see if there is a gap in the market for that idea before you start talking to people about it. If you have a great design idea, please be aware that if you start working that design before you've got some legal advice on it, you might lose your design rights. So you need to think and prep about what you're doing. But most importantly, you need to know where you fit in the grand scheme of things. Who will you be interacting with? And who are the main players currently in that marketplace? Now, this seems like a big ask, right? It is not, because books like mine that are on your reading list will give you the structure of the industry. If it's American you want, Donald Passman's will give you the American version of it. You can find out from music blogs what's going down currently in the business, and you can follow free services like Music Business Worldwide, which is a morning roundup of what's going on in the industry that drops into your inbox at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Music Week also does it, but I think you have to have a subscription to Music Week in order to access that. Music Business Worldwide, you do not. And Billboard, if you're interested in an American market. You can do an awful lot of the groundwork. You'll be amazed how many people blow their meetings by not being prepared. If you're working on the business side, there are internships. One of the gentlemen over there has done an internship with a company that I work with. Sometimes they are not quite what you want, but going and working in an office for a while can help you decide what it is you don't want too, or what isn't right for you. Yes, they're unpaid, except for your expenses. But if they're learning you, many people go on to full-time jobs in the business from doing internships. If I hear of any internships going, I usually notify Paul and he will tell you. So I pass on the information that I get on that. Use shamelessly every contact you have in this business. I would expect to see a fair number of you asking to link with me on LinkedIn by the end of the week, because I have over 1,000 connections on my LinkedIn page, and through me you can get to a lot of people. LinkedIn, you might say, that's a bit grown up, that's not for me. All right, do it another way. Do Facebook, do whatever is your social media of choice. But shamelessly use your contacts. Do it politely and don't hassle people. But if, I don't know, you know someone who works in marketing at Sony, just ask them if there's any opportunity that you could come and shadow them for a day. In my law firm, we take law students and allow them to shadow us from time to time. And very often, if they impress us, they will go on to do something else. And one young lady who did that is just about to start a training contract with us. So it may not seem much, but you can make of it what you can. The only thing I would say is don't hassle us. Because if I get people chasing me down on emails when I am up to my neck in 3,000 contracts, I am going to get very annoyed with you and you're going in the junk bin, okay? But if it's a nice, polite, pleasant email, not hassling me, then when I have an odd moment, I will reply. So it's common sense, right? But use that network. Everyone you meet, people you meet in this room, people you meet who come and talk like me, ask for their contact details because you never know when those contacts are going to lead to something really useful. If you have someone who is clearly going to be a performing live artist of some kind, then you're going to need a live agent. And you may actually start with live agents as your first part of the professional team. They can open other doors for you. So the first question is, well, how do I get an agent? And I'm not saying that any of this is easy, but scouts visit all the main outlets for early music and new acts. There are scouts from all the major live agents that will be at these events. So if you can blag yourself a spot, even if it's the first one up of the night, offer to play for free or, do a, kind of guarantee I'll bring in 10, 20, 30 people who buy lots of beer over the bar. Whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. Places like the Troubadour, for example, have been going forever, but they are, renowned places for finding new talent. You may have contacts in other bands who already have live agents, and you can ask them, how did they find you? How did you get it? And see if there's a model you can follow there. The live agents will have ins with all the scouts at the record labels. And so if they think they are seeing a talent emerge, one of the first things they'll do is tell their contacts the record labels because they will get a kickback financially for doing so. So they pass on tips to the record labels who will then send down usually a junior scout. So don't expect to see the MD of the company turning up at your first gig. They won't. You probably won't even know whether there's somebody from Island or Sony or PS or whoever in the room. But the scouts will get in there first. I always know that this is a really serious signing if I turn up and then somehow miraculously 5 minutes before the band goes on, all the A&R guys arrive. And you think, they must be in the pub around the corner just waiting for the nod on this, because I've been standing here for half an hour waiting for this band to start, and they walk in. They seem to know exactly the moment to walk in the door. They never hang around. They're gone within 4 numbers. That does not mean they didn't like what they heard, but they are not ready to talk to you about it at that point. But you should follow up. If you know that there's a scout from Cobalt's AWOL label was there, then you follow them up. You say, hi, did you enjoy the gig? Can we have a chat about it? Can we have a coffee? You may also find that agents will approach you if you're doing a live performance, particularly if it's one where there is a history of bands being discovered at those venues. They're not likely to come to open mic nights. I do suggest in my book that open mic nights is a way in. I would say it's probably more a way of honing your craft and getting better at performing, because open mics is probably not where you're going to see the serious players. But you might find managers there. If your type of music does not rely heavily on live, then you may not be that bothered about getting a live agent. You may decide that you're going to do it all online and that you're not going to, kind of worry about people being able to discover you for themselves physically. You'll do it all through online social media. But bear in mind that everybody else is doing this too. So it's no good you just going, oh, hi guys, there's a link to my SoundCloud page, or, everybody has their links to SoundCloud pages now. So that is not necessarily going to be enough. You have to have that angle on it. It is true to say that no record label will probably sign you unless there is some clear evidence of action online. True followers, true fans, the true numbers of streams. They all look at these because it's such a valuable way of earning money these days that they need to know that the numbers are looking healthy already on social networking. If you are looking at self-release, then you need also to be seriously considering what we call label services, which is a relatively new development where instead of just, putting it up on your page or on SoundCloud or Spotify, no, you can't get on Spotify, but if you're just doing it as a hobby or very low key, then fine. But once you scale that up into something closer to having your own label and maybe signing other artists to you, then you're going to need help. You're going to need help with marketing. You're going to need help with possibly manufacture if you decide you're going to do some physical. And you're going to need help with, general distribution, whether that's online or physical or both. There has always been a part of the industry that is the distribution. The manufacturing and distribution sector has always been there as a service. And you can still go to companies like Believe and Absolute, and they will provide you with a physical and online pure distribution deal. They can also manufacture for you if you need physical CDs and vinyl. As an aside, I think vinyl may have peaked. I keep saying this, but I'm getting less of a sense of growth in the area of vinyl now. I think we might be done with it as a kind of rapid growth area. And while I'm on the subject, I think the album format is now gradually breaking down. Again, I've been waiting for this to happen for a long time because I thought with online we would move away from the album format and we'd be talking much more about single track and bundles. It's kind of not happened, but I'm starting to see it break down now into that kind of structure of deals. And you know that it's becoming more normal because the major record labels are now doing it as part of their deals. Island in particular now has commitments in their record contracts which are to a track a month, and then they bundle them at the end. So we are seeing the album format break down. Sorry, I digress. Come back. Label services. If you need that additional help over and above just like a pure distribution deal, then there are companies that will supply those additional services as you need them. So you would, for example, go to Cobalt's Artists Without a Label, which, as its name suggests, is for the independent artist who does not have a mainstream label. They and companies like Play It Again Sam, PS, are established independent companies who will provide you with the marketing services. They'll provide recording costs if you need them. You do need to have a bit of a buzz about you, and you do need to have something going for you that they will risk the upfront money on the marketing. But they also will sign one-off kind of assistance deals to new artists. PS is probably better at this than AWOL, I would say. BMG is now doing it through their master rights service. Prodigy, clients of ours, #1 this week, is on a label services type deal with BMG. So you need a lawyer, and we will do as much or as little as you want us to do. So if you already have a manager on board and you already know where you're going and there's some interest already in from Warner, then our job is to improve the offers that you're getting. So we look at them and we say, no, you can do better than that. We know that they can do better than that. Let's push back and get better. Right? That's the kind of more traditional kind of lawyer's role. And then when you're happy with the deal, what we call paper it. We do the contract for it. It may be, though, that you're slightly earlier on than that. So in terms of getting a manager, you're going to get used to the story here. A lot of it is word of mouth. It's talking to other bands who have managers, looking at the careers of artists that you really like and seeing who manages them. All of this information is available online. And saying, oh, I like what they've done with that career. I wonder if they'd be willing to work with me. It is quite difficult to get them to pay attention to you. So a live agent might help. A lawyer might help. Lawyers know all the people that we need to know in the business, and they will usually take our calls or answer our emails. Not always, but they will usually. A good manager will then take it from there and work with you on a strategy and build that strategy as to whether you want to sort of self-release or which way you want to go on things. Managers will charge you 20% of what you earn. It'll be deducting recording costs and things like that off it, but it is a 20% rate, and there's not much point in negotiating that because that is the going rate. And on live, it will be 20% after the costs of putting on the show. They will also probably want to sign you up for 3 to 5 years. So you need to know and trust them. And you can ask for a trial period, but the more established managers, the Modists and the people like that, are not interested in trial periods. If Modest or Psycho wants to manage you, you kind of tend to say, where do I sign? Because they can add such value onto what you are doing that if they are interested and you like what they're saying, you don't ask for a trial period, you just go into it. If you decide you need to get a lawyer, then where do you find us? Well, again, word of mouth. Ask your friends if they've got lawyers, who they're using. Do they like them? Do they rate them? There are directories. 2 main ones are Legal 500 and Chambers. We had a funny one with Chambers this week. Normally you have to pitch to be in Chambers, and people spend a long time doing a submission to say how great they are and that they should be in this. My firm is so anti-publicity that we didn't even have a website until about 2 months ago. And even now it's embarrassing. But we just don't do it because I don't know, I guess we don't need to because we've got enough coming through the door. But Chambers listed us as recommended lawyers without us even submitting to them because other people were kind enough to say nice things about us. And so they thought, oh, well, we haven't had a submission of these people, but we can't ignore them, so we better put them in. So Legal 500 and Chambers is a good start point to narrow down who people you might want to see. You should see more than one. You should probably try and see 2 or 3 different types of lawyers if you can, because we're all very different. The company I work for is 7 or 8 people doing purely music-related stuff and monsters. The big law firms can have 150, 160 lawyers, and they will cover everything from divorce through to buying a property for you and all points in between. And then you have the one-man bands. So you should really see 2 or 3 different types. We will mostly give you half an hour free legal advice, which is normally it's like a kind of get to know you sort of half an hour. It's not detailed advice into what what you should have in your contract. It's more, what do you want from a lawyer? Is that realistic? Can we provide it? Management contracts, however, may be the first thing that you come across, either as a manager wanting to sign up an artist or an artist wanting a manager. That's usually the first piece of contract paper that you are required to sign. And you must not use the same lawyer as your manager. You have to be separately advised. It's the only occasion when I am absolutely 100% solid on this. You must have separate lawyers because your interests and those of the manager are not the same. Right? There is a conflict of those interests because the manager might want to sign you up for 12 years at 30%, and that's not in your best interest. So if the lawyer normally works for the manager, they've got a conflict going on in their heads. Manager wants 30% in 12 years, but really we should be doing 3 years and 20%. You know what I mean? So there is an inherent conflict. And our laws, our regulations say we shouldn't do it. Conflicts of interest is something that I deal with every day. It does my head in. Because when you work for an artist law firm, you're always dealing with the same sort of people all the time. So conflicts come up at least once a day. And you have to work out whether you can work on that project or not. Do not automatically go to a lawyer if you're an artist, don't automatically go to a lawyer recommended by a manager, because they may have their reasons for going with a tame lawyer who doesn't raise difficult points, right? May not. May be absolutely arm's length, absolutely, great lawyer, you should go use them. But go see a couple of others as well, just to make your own mind up as to whether that is the best person for you. Be also a little wary if the record label pushes you in a particular direction. Sometimes, again, that's absolutely straightforward. We get a lot of referrals from A&R people because they know we do a good job. But sometimes a lawyer is used because they're a pushover, because the record label knows they will not challenge that contract very hard. So they push you in that direction in order to make sure they have an easy ride on the deal. So again, I say, choose a lawyer that is selected by you, but go and see a couple of others as well. You can learn a lot by doing these meetings, by the way. If you're really canny, you can ask a couple of really decent legal questions of each of the 3 lawyers and get an hour and a half's worth of free legal advice out of it. But mostly it's just, into getting to get that relationship. Can you work with this person? We haven't talked about publishing, but if you are a songwriter, whether you're also a performer or not, or you're managing a songwriter, then your first route is probably not going to be the record labels at all. It's going to be publishers. And the structure of the publishing world is quite similar to that of record labels in that you have major publishers, independent publishers, and what I would call the kind of DIY section, really. Because unfortunately, a lot of lawyers say to startup labels, record labels, they say, you can't just be a record label. You need to take the publishing as well. And you need to do a bit of live, and you need to take a bit of merchandising and that kind of thing, right? So these record labels, who start up record labels, suddenly find their publishers as well. You need to be very careful about those, because you're putting your songwriting rights with someone who really didn't kind of want to be publishers in the first place until the lawyers told them to, have no idea how they're going to work songs, have no idea about developing a writer, and are just taking the rights for the money's sake. So the DIY publishing sector is one to be wary of. But again, you should be having some legal advice at that point to say, how are these guys going to operate on the ground? Do they know how to publish? Do they know internationally how to collect the money? That kind of thing. We do also have a couple of rather interesting directions that the industry is going in at the moment. We've talked about the whole DIY self-release streaming world, but there are also people that are just getting into the business through non-traditional routes. Instead of signing a whole publishing deal, they're going to synchronization agents who specialize in just getting music into films and ads and Netflix and TV programs. They don't take all your publishing rights, they just act as a sales agent for you and go out and get you into the music supervisors or the ad agencies who place music. Every class I've ever been involved in discusses blockchain. And I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't think it's coming anytime soon to the music business. Don't see it. You would think that the DIY world would really enjoy the whole idea and concept of blockchain, and yes, they do. But on the ground, in reality, it is not happening. And I don't, okay, you could say, all right, Bitcoin. Yeah, I did my first Bitcoin deal last week because somebody wanted to pay in Bitcoin. I'd be surprised if that money is ever usable, but there we go. So we are aware of it, and it is kind of happening, but not in any commercial sense. And it will take, I think, quite a long time to get there. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is here and is happening, and you see it, it's already impacting on all of your lives, and you may not even be aware of it. So I would, if I were investing time, it would be in artificial intelligence, not blockchain currently, but that's a very personal view. I'm saying this because I think it's important for you to know that this is an industry that encompasses an awful lot of different skills and different ways and different streams for making a success. Don't think narrow, think broad. And if there's a gap that you've noticed, think, can I fill that? Because, you know, we didn't have Spotify playlist people 2 years ago. We did not have vloggers and bloggers and influencers 5 years ago. These are entirely new roles that have been invented and are making a lot of money for people. So, you know, you are at the start of your careers. You could decide, you see a gap. There's the publishing company that was started by some students at LIPA, who started as think agents in Liverpool. And they're now one of the most successful independent publishers because they spotted that there was, at that time, nobody that was targeting just synchronization. And they cleaned up the market. So, you know, there is still room for innovation and for use of technology in new ways. Jury's out whether virtual reality is going to do anything, but there is an interesting development in VR to do with live gigs. If you can't be at the gig, if you couldn't get your Spice Girls tickets, could you experience it through virtual reality, for example? I've even done hologram contracts, which was interesting. Now, downloads are almost a thing of the past. It's now becoming quite niche. CDs are holding up. Declining market, but surprisingly still holding up. Vinyl did this huge surge, but I do think it's leveling off now. I think people have kind of got through the novelty of the vinyl record and loving the sleeve and all of that kind of thing. By the way, the stats say that most under 25-year-olds buying vinyl didn't have a player to play them on. They just bought them because they liked the look of them. So I think it might be a fad that's just peaked, personally. But yet next year's stats will tell me whether I was right on that. There are statistics you can find out about how the industry is doing. If you go to the BPI website, there are stats on what different areas of the industry are bringing into the UK and in export sales, if that's your bag. And BASCA and the Music Publishers Association also publish annual reports on the value of music. If you're thinking about your projects, those are certainly resources that you should be having a look at. But in terms of my feeling for the industry right now, it is, you'll be pleased to know, very positive. Because in the last 2 years, we finally got paid on streaming. This was a combination of prominent artists throwing their toys out their pram and removing their music from the Spotifys and YouTubes of this world. And I thank Taylor Swift for that, because she was quite instrumental in, well, it was probably her management, but she fronted it, okay? And Apple very quickly did a deal on the back of that. It was probably all set up, but don't worry about that. We have seen lobbying at parliamentary level, particularly in Europe. And we have seen just arm twisting going on all over the place to say, Spotify, Google, YouTube, you have to pay. You are using our content, you have to pay. And they are. And money that was held in suspense for sort of 2 or 3 years suddenly came out in a huge lump sum last year, and everybody had a very happy year that got a slice of that. But now you'll notice that the A&R people have got their corner offices back, and they're smiling and they're happy because of streaming. Streaming is our new saviour. It is paying. It's paying more on records than it is on songs. We're still not quite there on songs, because the record labels are more powerful than the publishers and have taken the lion's share of the money. So the publishers are still lobbying heavily behind the scenes to get their fair share for the writers, and are making some gains. And I envy you guys, because you are at the start of the journey and I'm at the end. So good luck. I'm done.